everyone, and welcome. Right, before we do anything, should we crack open our cans? Because otherwise it's going to be an awful noise. Oh, there we go, done. I'm Rebecca Eaves. I'm Director of Advertising Week in Europe. You probably can tell that from my non-American accent. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because we love all our partners equally, but if I like anyone the most, it has to be these guys. So I'm delighted to be talking to the team at Viant and guests. Now, if there is a word cloud for what's going on in Advertising Week this week already, it surely has to be AI. It dominated pretty much every session that we ran in May in London. And it's the incredible pace at which this conversation is evolving is extraordinary. In the data space, we know that AI is genuinely game-changing technology. It's really empowering marketers with advanced capabilities to harness the huge amounts of data at their disposal. So we've got a really great panel here of some industry leaders and ad tech experts today, and we're going to be looking at the transformative and potential of data and AI in marketing. So I'm going to do a quick intro from everyone, and then we'll get into the conversation. So first of all, Dustin. Dustin is the Chief Product Officer at Viant Technology, where he leads product strategy, development, and execution. I love reading these bios because you go, my God, you've done all of these things. This is incredible. So it's really one of the largest and only buy-side DSPs, I think, in digital advertising. Dustin is an industry veteran. That doesn't mean he's old, he's just very experienced, with over 2 decades of product leadership experience. And you helped build Amazon into one of the largest demand-side platforms in the market today. Then we've got Rick Erwin, who brings also over 25 years experience in data-driven marketing and advertising, and is CEO of Adstra. Have I pronounced that correctly?
You have, yeah.
Good. I did a session earlier today and actually got the name of the company wrong, which I was mortified by.
They had a buzzer.
Yeah. Anyway, he's a leading voice in the field of omnichannel marketing and a real outspoken advocate for the value of data in the global economy. So watch this space. Prior to Adstra, Rick was at Axiom, where he led data and identity business, as well as experienced data and identity business as well. And then we have, last but by no means least, we have Angelina, who's from the IAB. And you've got a great title. You're the Vice President of Measurement, Addressability, and Data Center. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Wow. Okay, so previously she was at Morgan Stanley, Merkle and Dentsu, and Angelina's got this extraordinary job, but I don't know how you keep up on it. So you're trying to be providing industry standards, guidance, and education on data and technology approaches, which just must be just a constant firefight of.
I like that elevator speech. I think I'm going to steal it.
I'm very impressed at the work you do. We're huge fans of the IAB in the UK and over here. So yeah. Hats off to you. So we're going to dive straight in, actually, with you, Angelina, and really some scene setting to start off with. So how has the landscape evolved in recent years with the integration of data and artificial intelligence? And what benefits does it bring to marketers? Because we've got tons of marketers in the room. Tell us why they should be getting involved in this space.
So I think AI has always been around, especially since, well, not always been around, but since programmatic and social media. A lot of platforms and social solutions have used AI and machine learning to some extent. I think we're moving towards a phase where, especially in the last 6 months, it's been accelerated in the advancement with ChatGPT and OpenAI. And we're seeing several different things coming to fruition, especially around content and IP from the advertiser and publisher landscape, how it's being used for creative optimization and creative development. And I think the one that's most exciting for me is around how it's being used for analytics and insights and being able to help develop advancements in cross-channel attribution, media mix modeling moving forward, given privacy regulations and continued deprecation of data signals.
Yeah. And in terms of benefit to marketers, what are you seeing as you're talking to members of the IAB?
I mean, I think that coming from the agency background on the ad ops side, there's a lot of opportunities to take rote, manual processes and automate that in a much more seamless way, and being able to draw insights a lot quicker. I'm definitely seeing this drive for being able to take, especially with the loss of signals, synthetic data, and drawing insights that possibly currently the models aren't able to do just yet. And so the potential is significant for enhancing very lean, small teams to do a lot more with what they have.
I see you nodding along there, Rick. It sounds like you wanted to jump,
Yes,
in.
lots of themes.
Go on.
Well, you talked about loss of signal. So in a world where, whether it's for actual concern for consumers' privacy or hegemony or whatever the reason, IDs are under pressure. They're being deprecated. But we're not headed for an identity-less world of marketing. Brands won't survive that. And so one of the, I think, underexplored areas for AI is how it can make better associations between identifiers where there's imperfect data. We'd all love to live in a world where every bit of data matching was deterministic and every data input was perfect. I think you'd all agree we don't live in that world. And so AI, just in the form, right now in our company, just in the form of advanced machine learning, which in the next 3 to 6 months will give way to deep learning techniques, many, many more accurate identity matches will be created than would have been created even just 1 or 2 years ago using technology that was available then. And so why does that matter? From an insight standpoint, in an enterprise where there are multiple business units, consumer-facing business units, but that don't perfectly talk to each other for whatever reason, many, many enormous insights can be created. For example, an intender consumer in one business unit that looked like a visitor to another one's property. We have a client who just told us, I wish they had told us before we renewed their contract, that they created, I think they said, a high 8-figure revenue boost by making connections like that across their 14 business units. That's powerful, and it's only going to become more powerful and more necessary in a signal-suppressed world.
Thank you for that. Actually, coming on to you, Rick, can you give us some examples of how those data-driven insights have really influenced identity and then marketing strategy?
Well, that's
I mean, the eightfold one is a great one.
Yeah, I mean, and there are just a million examples of that. It's not just multi-business unit enterprises, because then you're thinking about huge, huge companies. But even companies, and we've all seen this in very successful brand organizations, where there are different data pools that are defined by the identifier. So there will be a data pool for, first-party visitation traffic. That's first-party data. And I know many more brands that aren't connecting that to customer information than ones who are. That's another great example of where AI-powered identity resolution, real identity resolution, not just we have a graph, but actually making connections that were unmakeable before and even just a couple of years ago.
I think a good example of that is if you think about what the impact has been with Apple iOS and the fact that a lot of platforms currently are not able to optimize towards targeting Apple devices because of the ATT tracking signals being lost. And with AI, it can fill in those gaps and create audience segments and provide inferred data about their behavior. So taking back-end data, site analytics, or knowing that certain users have an Apple device, what can they draw from the existing data that they have, and leveraging AI to make some assumptions on those. I think the one thing to think about, though, is bias in the systems and making sure that, that the data that you're collecting has enough representation of the audiences that you're targeting or currently reaching.
Can you give me some examples where that hasn't happened? Because obviously that is a big issue.
Well, yeah, so as the example with Apple, because of the signal loss, several DSPs are unable to retarget or remarket to Apple iOS devices. So if you look at, if you have third-party data or data coming from companies like Adstra, right, you can understand who has an Apple device, how often they use it, and understand the types of preferences that they have, brands that they're loyal to, things that they're considering, and possibly create cohorts off of that and target them out on the web, even though you might not have those signals currently to reach those audiences.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is, it's the value, but also the danger, right?
Yeah.
So kind of like, you hear this phrase, garbage in, garbage out all the time. Part of that is if you have really bad data, right, obviously you're gonna make bad decisions. Also, you could say if you have no data, you're also gonna make bad decisions. And so kind of using that and understanding where, in some cases, modeling things out would work and what significance you have, but also in other times, kind of if you're synthesizing data or creating data, like how valuable that is. And a lot of it will come to testing and the ability for you to understand the performance of that so that you don't just go full on. Like we've seen plenty of horror stories about ChatGPT taking text and all bad text and then creating horrible articles and perpetuating that. It's like, it's basically on steroids by creating this, and we have to make sure that you have that good balance for what we do.
Got you. Actually, coming on to you, Dustin, it'd be good if you could talk to how AI is really enhancing our understanding of customer behavior and their preferences, and then what Viant is doing to address that in your platform.
Yeah, thanks. So I think, I look at, as you mentioned, I've been in the industry for 20 years, so it feels like a long time. And the thing I love about the industry, which is also the most complicated and difficult, is that it's very complex. There's a ton of data available. It gets more complicated every day, and so the complexity keeps increasing, the number of data signals keeps increasing, and it continues to evolve. So great for us as an industry to kind of have job security and look forward, but very challenging as a marketer to understand that. In that, I think part of that, if you look at that complexity, think of the number of signals we now have. Before, it was websites. Now we have across digital, CTV. We've got, I think, what I saw recently is 25 million websites now, 7 million apps, 50,000 or so CTV options, and then you kind of couple that with all of the different segments and targeting that you have available, multi-channel campaigns that we've talked, cross-channel measurement, and so all of this, you really can't manage it as a person. And humans can no longer manage this type of functionality and this type of data, and that's really where AI comes in. So AI, I always say AI is not take your jobs and kind of the land of the machines. AI is very much, it's a tool that you have available that will enable you to work faster, just like using Excel before. If you didn't have Excel before, imagine the calculations you did, calculators. There are a lot of tools that we've created over the years that will enable us. And I think as marketers, we should look at those tools to enable us as well.
Yeah, got it. And talk to me a bit about what Viant's doing in this space.
We do believe in AI. We've been talking about AI for a while. Our vision is what we've dubbed autonomous advertising. Kind of more recently, we released a new bid optimization functionality based off of AI and ML. And the goal was, just same thing, pull all that data together, millions of data points, and determine how we can bid better for our advertisers. And so quick adoption, because who doesn't want to save money in terms of some of their CPMs and maintain their performance? And so what we've done is with our new bid optimizer functionality, for example, came out in June. The majority of our advertisers have adopted it. It's saving about 35% at max value in CPMs for customers, and just a kind of an early way for us to manage AI. And then I think longer term, I think what we're looking at are various other ways for us to utilize AI. That comes in the form of recommendations. That comes in the form of kind of using those new innovations that you're all using already, so kind of natural language processing or creative generation, and starting to build those tools. And so we, small plug for the marketing team, we do have an innovation day coming up in a couple of weeks.
I love that. That was seamless.
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
No, great. You were nodding, Rick. Does that mean you want to talk, or should we move on to the next question?
No.
I
don't want to break your flow.
Learning the signals here. So going back to Angelina, obviously measurement is one of the key parts of your role, and it'd be really good to get a sense of how we should be measuring AI within marketing, and what KPIs should be looking at and what shouldn't we be looking at.
That's a really hard question. I think we're still in the early stages of really trying to define what would success look like. I think there's a couple of aspects to think about. There's the financial, the operations, and the logistics perspective. Yeah. And if you're a CEO, CMO, CFO, or you're working directly underneath those executive leaders, they're going to want to understand how is it moving our business, and what are the things that we're doing that will enable us to be more competitive, and flexible. So things like, does it actually help increase productivity? Does it reduce errors? So how are we reducing the amount of time that we're allocating towards correcting the data or processing the data? I think those are very, very important. And then ROI or being able to tie towards increase in revenue, that's going to be the hardest part to measure. So exactly what percentage are we actually generating by using these tools? However, just understand that many, many brands and agencies are going to want a lot more nimble tools moving forward, given the state that we're in. So you have to collaborate internally with various different groups, including your legal and compliance team, to really understand what those are, right? So are you reducing legal and compliance risk is definitely one of them.
You can also you can measure the way you always used to measure. Ask anyone who's using Google Performance Max or Meta's ASE product, and a lot of brands are really happy with the results. There are issues there, but a lot of brands are very happy with the results they're getting using the measurement techniques they were using before. But also inside your company, there's another way to look at it, which is don't worry so much about measuring the part where your associates are just making their jobs better by using some of these tools where they weren't before. We all come from companies where people are I'm not one of them, but people are coding extensions into their business applications that they use to do better internal reporting or that they use to speed up a process that they do every month. And generative AI writes code better than only the power, anyone but the power users of those technologies. There's a million ways you can create value that you don't even have to worry about measuring. Just give your associates a chance to make their job easier using some of these tools. And we've seen just amazing. We do a monthly forum where we get everyone together and we just talk about what have you done in the last month, and then we cross-pollinate. And anytime somebody says I've done this and somebody says I don't know how to do that, then we do a little webinar afterwards or a lunch and learn or whatever. And I'm the CEO. I almost don't care what. To measure that. I just know there can't possibly be anything bad coming out of that.
Right.
I do think that there's the aspect of efficiency, right, and tool value, and I think that's great. And if you can measure it, great. If you know that it saved you hours every day or every week or every month, that's awesome for you and your teams. But I think, like you said, I think it does come down to performance. So in some of these, they feel like black boxes. And so what you do, you're A/B testing. I will run these 2 campaigns. Ideally, you do as much control and ability that you can. I know it's not perfect. And then it's just, does it work better? And you use that internally and externally. So the things that you build or use internally, how much better is it? And then I think as you start to test out features across different DSPs and systems, then how much better does that work for you, and find where it's not working.
You meant like the AI tools in the demand platforms?
That's right.
Yeah, I mentioned there's issues. One of the issues because I started my career working with database marketers. So that's kind of many aspects of that are gone now. They don't really exist anymore. But one that's gone that should still exist in every data-driven, people-based marketing company is owning and understanding your definition of the consumer at the individual consumer level. And one of the things the demand platform AI-driven tools do is they sort of make you lazy around that. And some organizations have even lost the ability to know who by name their non-responsive, lapsed, or non-customers are. That's, when I grew up in database marketing, that was an unforgivable, that was like people would get fired from major companies for not knowing.
So how do you overcome that, and how do you make sure that that doesn't
happen?
happen?
I think the way, not every company can, but the way many enterprises are doing it is by owning their own consumer identity spine in their company. When they do that, interestingly, it makes every connection in the ecosystem work better. Because of that, we talked about imperfect data. Just pick your favorite onboarder without mentioning any names. You send a file to them, you get some percentage of that matches and some doesn't. It's a black box too in most cases. You don't know whether the non-matches were your best, highest potential customers. You don't know. If you bring your own identity spine, you have a much better chance, number one, of having, creating more accurate matches, but also knowing on the return what's happened.
I was going to go into a whole rabbit hole around benchmarking, because I think that's a really interesting point around measurement. But maybe we'll come back to that. So going back to you again then, Rick, what measures should organisations really take to ensure the security of that customer data as they collect and utilise it for AI-powered? I think security is, we've talked about governance and legal already a little bit, so it'd be great to get your point of view on that.
Yeah, if this wasn't about AI, we'd all be looking at each other like, well, I'm in a company where I deal with consumer data. We have governance policy, we have associate training and compliance, we have privacy point of view and all of that. But we're talking about AI here, so I think the two things that are hitting my radar, number one, no matter how big or outstandingly strong your company's technology security is, go and search on major company ransomware attacks. And it's shocking. Like some of the very largest companies, these are only the ones that admit it too, because there's some who to admit it would destroy their business, so they don't admit it. But the ones who've admitted it, it's unbelievable. You guys might have seen the MGM Grand one, which was enormous.
I got that email.
Yeah. And over to you, Dustin. I want to hear all about that. But ransomware is going to get way, way harder to prevent because of AI. In a world where anything can be simulated, any human will be, within 2 years, it'll be very hard for any of us to tell that we're not talking to a real person. And so I think ransomware becomes a much bigger threat than it ever used to be. And the single biggest thing all of us can do for that is train the daylights out of our associates, because the ransomware attacks come through people. They take advantage, they prey on people. But the other one, which probably a lot of people in this room say, duh, it's obvious, but some of you won't, is in service of some of your highest potential employees wanting to lean into AI and use, log into ChatGPT or use Midjourney or DALL-E or whatever, and they're sharing data, and they might be sharing company proprietary or customer proprietary data, and unless your company works with a closed only your company instance of that AI, you are, by virtue of doing that, giving that information over to the training set, which could be disastrous if you're not careful. So it's really important to make sure all of your associates know what not to put on there. Even when I was using the example of some of our folks write code on it for their extensions of business applications and stuff, we had to write guidelines for you will have to disguise what you're asking it to write the code for, if not disguising it might expose something that we would consider company proprietary information. That's not intuitive to everybody,
that's
but
quite
it's a big
hard
deal.
to get your head around, isn't it, as a concept?
Yeah. But I think also, to extend to that, going back to the bias in the data, a really good example, we did, went through DALL-E and said, show us images of, top ad executives at an ad agency, and what would they look like? And it came back with, for C-level, CMO, CEO down the line, all Caucasian, mid-50s males. Or when you said, show me an image of an ideal family, 2 parents, 2 kids, it was a male and a female, a boy and a girl. And so there was no diversity in that in terms of LGBTQ representation or ethnicity or even ageism, right? Yeah. So I think that's where we have to think about what data set that you're using, but learn to be a great prompter, right? So I think everyone in this industry is going to have to learn different skill sets to challenge the AI models. And again, going back is how do you figure out how to work around some of the bias and the lack of data representation for an audience segment.
I couldn't agree. I mean, the whole notion of prompt is just, prompt experts are going to be, raking it in. So you touched on 2 or 3 of the big challenges. Dustin, how do you think ad tech can help in any of these or any of the other big issues that you're seeing or facing?
I was going to chime in because I think while training is important, right, and we should all understand privacy, it keeps changing, and the laws keep changing, and regulations keep changing, and kind of expecting your team members or marketers to figure that out is impossible, right? They're running campaigns, they're trafficking, they're trading, they're doing other things, and so then kind of now you have to understand the different laws in California versus different laws in New York versus somewhere else, and then you go international.
Let alone
it all changes.
across the pond, yeah.
And so I do think that for ad tech, I think the challenges that we have, and one of the biggest challenges or things that we can improve on, is really managing that first party data in a secure way. And so part of it is us enabling that simplistically in a way so that you can feel safe that your data is in a secure place. But also it's, you don't enable your data for clean rooms. You don't put it in data stores or data platforms because you want your data there. You put your data there because, one, you want it secure, but really you want to utilize it against your campaigns. You want to build audiences, you want to traffic that, you want to do analysis. And so I think for ad tech, we just need to do a much better job at both enabling that. So kind of what we're looking at on Viant side is how do we onboard and simplify onboarding of customer data in a way that's secure and clean, not necessarily through us, through our partnerships like Snowflake and others, or other clean rooms that I won't mention. We were talking about this a little bit earlier as well. So then now you have the ability to utilize that data, hopefully at companies of all sizes, not just large, big companies who also don't have data teams and don't have resources available, but kind of going all the way down to mid-funnel and lower. And then really taking that data and then creating standardized data sets and processes against it. So looking at some of the data that we're pulling in via our partnerships, how do we start to build kind of standardized audience creation and publish functionality in that? And so it allows you to go straight through the DSP. So as a marketer, you're not trying to figure out the tech behind it. You don't need to go to a data science team, or you need to go to a BI. You can actually enable that yourself.
Got you. We've got a few minutes left, and I'm conscious that this time last year, we would already be having a very different conversation. Can you look 3-5 years ahead and see what trends that, how we'll be using AI in data space? Angelina, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, I think we are moving towards a more probabilistic data economy, where raw event log level data is going to be a luxury and not a standard. And so this is where I think AI is going to help a lot and stitch a good portion of the data together. We are going to see a more fragmented environment. Think about retail media networks. They're kind of their own walled garden. You think about Google and perhaps like the separation of YouTube data with Google Ads data, things like that. And so having the ability to take probabilistic data that has noise inserted into it, that may not have all the information that you need, is going to help with doing multi-touch attribution. One of the things that I think I'm excited about is like predictive analysis and being able to put into it different scenarios to help with media mix modeling as well. So if you think about, let's just say next year, if for some reason, right, a federal law becomes the norm and it has the following requirements, how would this model be different? Yeah. And so with AI, it could come back with several different recommendations.
Yeah. Got you. Rick, what do you see?
Given how fast it's moving, predictions are super, but advertising is one of the industries that's going to be enormously affected. Look at, if advertising, to oversimplify it, is about text and image creation and creative generation, I would say, look for massive displacements in there. Media planning and buying won't look the same 3 years from now. There's just no way. And I think, hyper-personalization, whether that's really what brands will benefit from, I don't know, but it will be possible where it wasn't really possible before for a lot of, so those are just two things that I think are going to upend the advertising industry.
Dustin, do you want to
Fortunately, I have very similar responses to them. I am big on predictive generation, and I think that that will change the way that we think of advertising, and it goes kind of in those early stages and understanding the customer, and then I think of that kind of understanding better the customer journey. So understanding not just kind of a year down the line, but even further down the line, forward and backwards. And then I think the other thing I throw in there that might be a little bit different is that I do think there's going to be a lot more automation coming out of it, and so it will make our lives, our jobs easier. earlier. It will kind of take away those, like I never want people clicking buttons and doing manual boring tasks. So it should enable us to eliminate those and really move forward more quickly.
What a perfect note to end on. And Arthur promised to throw things at me if we didn't finish on time. So as much as I'd like to continue our conversation, that's it. Thank you so much, Angelina, Rick, and Dustin, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.